for people just joining us on YouTube here, hi, welcome to another episode of Gamer Oral History with Folkwise. We've got Jace here. Jace is here to
Hello.
talk about Pokemon. Jace, how are you?
I'm so happy to be here. I'm so excited. This is what an incredibly exciting opportunity to speak to you about something that's been one of my main passions for the last 5 years.
Oh, well, just five or?
Well, Pokemon has been a passion of mine for my whole life, but the very specific esoteric niche community that we're going to be talking about, I first started playing in 2019.
Oh, excellent, excellent. Okay. Well, let's get into Pokemon as a whole. We'll get to 2019, your journey into the draft leagues and everything. But and okay, let's start from not quite the beginning. Let's start from like square one. In that, you've got like an incredible like audiobook narrator voice. And I just have been thinking about that for the last like hour that we've been doing showdown battles. So that's been incredible. Just want to get that out there.
Thank you so much. I went to my undergrad was in theater performance.
Oh,
and
excellent.
Acting. So yes.
Okay, so take us to the very beginning of like your journey with Pokemon. We're gonna get to like this very specific form of Pokemon that we were playing before your interview. But take us to the very beginning of Pokemon. Like, let me just ask, what's the first Pokemon game you started with?
Yeah, well, let's go all the way back to the beginning. The year is 1999, and two things entered America at the same time: Pokemon Red and Blue and Jason Pollock.
Oh, wow.
And I have been connected to Pokemon truly ever since. I, in some ways, learned to read by reading Pokemon like guidebooks where they would break down all the stats and Pokédex entries that, Octillery evolves from Remoraid. I would learn all of these different new words and details from reading these Pokemon books. My parents would show me a tiny little corner of a Pokemon and ask me to guess what Pokemon it was. And they would do that with, all 500 Pokemon that came out when I was a kid during Pokemon Platinum's time. And I'd be able to nail it, no problem, from a single toe, a single foot, a single little detail. My first Pokemon game was actually a game called Pokemon Blue Mystery Dungeon, which was the first ever video game I had on a game console. So I played a few video games before on the computer, like the Ben 10 games on CartoonNetwork.com. Was maybe my first like gaming memory. But Pokemon, it was Red and Blue Mystery Dungeon, which are they're known as spin-off games from the what's called the main series. My first main series game was Pokemon Diamond version, where I picked the starter Piplup, the little penguin Pokemon.
And so you started off with Pokemon Diamond, which is Gen 4, which is 2000 and...
Oh, God, I think that's 2005, 2006? No, maybe 2007. I don't know. It was in there. I remember by the time I was in middle school, I started to fall out of love with Pokemon. I always found it very interesting, but I believed from my community that it wasn't cool to be into Pokemon, that it was a childish game. And the game is designed in a lot of ways for a younger audience. But it has so much heart and so much depth, especially in the lore and the depth of the creature designs, which in my opinion is Pokemon's strongest strong suit. Sorry.
No, I was gonna say, if I can interrupt, I think when I was a kid, like Final Fantasy VII was out, and I remember like watching like my neighbors, like my older cousin, play it, and I couldn't really like follow what was going. I knew it looked cool, and I knew like there was obviously something amazing going on here, but I couldn't really follow it. And then when I played Pokemon, I was like, this is an RPG a kid can learn RPGs with. You know what I mean? I wonder if that's like the same. You were talking about falling out of love, but I guess you had to fall in love with Pokemon as a kid. So what made you fall in love in the first place?
Yeah. I fell in love, fell out of love, and obviously found my way back. I think the thing that captured my imagination in the first place is just the creature designs are so fun. The sense of exploration when there's like these surprises around every corner. That's something that a lot of video games can do, but I think Pokemon, especially the older games, do a really good job of hiding hidden items. A rare Pokemon that only shows up once a week, especially before the era of every little detail of a game being chronicled on the online wiki, when all you had was the like horribly um, uh, horribly inaccurate Prima game guides.
Yeah.
When you had those, it was like, okay, I'm on my own, just exploring this world. I'm a game designer, both as part of my Pokemon Draft League tournament organizing, and also as a career. And I think the thing that makes Pokemon so strong is the amount of choices that you get. In a lot of RPGs like Final Fantasy, you know which characters are going to be on your roster. And maybe you switch out their moves or something like that, their spells, their arts, whatever it is. In Pokemon, there's, by the time I was playing it in Generation 4, 493 different options. And you can choose any of them to be the 6 Pokemon on your team, and then you can give them any item, you can change their ability, you can change their moves. The options for choice are just mind-bogglingly infinitesimal possibilities, which lets every person truly express themselves by having a favorite, by having ones that they identify with.
That's excellent. That really is there's so many little, like you're saying, choices you can make when you play Pokemon.
Yeah.
Who was like on your first team back in the day?
Oh man, it was a very classic Generation 4 team. I definitely had the Empoleon, who did everything. He was my overleveled starter and only used attacking moves. I'm sure it had Drill Peck, Surf, which it had to have so I could get around the water. It had Hydro Cannon to do damage, which is a notoriously bad move, but beloved by kids. And I think the last move was like Metal Claw. Just a terrible competitive move set that I would know now. Excuse me. And I think the rest of the team was just kind of whatever I thought was cool, but I never used them in battle. So I think there must have been a Luxray on there. I definitely had a Garchomp. That was my favorite Pokemon for a very, very long time. Oh man, it was so long ago, when I was a little kid. I have ADHD, and Pokemon fits perfectly in my ADHD brain with the infinitesimal possibilities in team building. But it also means I have a horrible memory for stuff like that.
Got it.
But it was definitely the Gen 4 staples, yeah.
So you had said earlier that you kind of fell out of love with Pokemon for a while.
Yeah.
I think it's like I think a lot of people probably have a story like that, but especially people who pick Pokemon back up. That is to say, when that was your first Pokemon, when did you start taking Pokemon like seriously?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I loved Pokemon as a kid, thought I was kind of too old for it. In middle school, was like, nah, I'm too cool for this stuff anymore. I don't like kids stuff. Immediately he started playing Minecraft, which is another notoriously like kids game with a lot of depth. And then I think it was around when I was 18 or 19, starting college, that I watched some videos by the channel Poke-Aim MD, which I'm so like I like to call it brain rot in this community that I know why that is his name, but he's one of the biggest competitive only Pokemon YouTubers. And he was playing games just like we were doing in the OU tier, is what it's called, single battles online. I didn't know you could battle online. I thought it was only in the little handheld game. And somebody in like the theater club at my high school showed me that, like backstage during an event, he was like playing Pokemon instead of doing the important like stage crew stuff. Watched that, and then he participated in this thing called a draft league, and it was a series of videos he made that were more highly produced than the other just like typical 25-minute battle videos he would do. And there were these storylines emerging through this community draft league where so many different Pokemon got to see the spotlight, and people were highly invested in the performance of each team and each player and each Pokemon. And I got so caught up in that whole draft league scene that after watching it, I knew I had to participate in one myself. Not with a bunch of big YouTubers, but just with random people I found on the internet who eventually would become my friends.
So, and you said you were about 19?
I was about 19.
Okay. So did you go right from playing Pokemon like casually, like hit the win button with my starter, like only like over leveled Empoleon, and then you kind of fell off, then you went right into draft leagues? Or did you have
Pretty
like a
much.
VGC or like a Smogon era?
So
Which if
yeah,
you
there was
we can unpack if when you get into it.
there was about a year-long period of time before I started doing draft leagues that I just occasionally would play Pokemon Showdown, the online battle simulator.
Mm-hmm.
And I would only play their random battles format. Random battles is by far the most popular format on the website. It's the most popular way Pokemon is played in the world. It's even more popular than the official competitive format in VGC.
Oh wow.
If you go by pure number of battles per month, because you don't have to prepare anything for random battles. It's just a randomly generated team of 6 Pokemon that you throw at another person's 6. You can play it while you pee. You can play it at work when the boss isn't looking. You can play it while you're stopped at a really long stop sign, which you shouldn't do, but people do. And that low barrier to entry makes random battles just have a huge popularity. And that's honestly a lot of what the Pokemon Showdown website is dedicated to. I learned all of the little details of what makes the competitive Pokemon game interesting through playing those random battles.
Okay. I will ask for you to break down a little bit. So, explain like someone like this, like you're talking to someone who has like beaten the Pokemon game of their choice before. Let's say they've beaten Heart Gold, Soul Silver, just because it's my favorite. What is Pokemon? What is Pokemon Showdown? Since we're going to be talking about that for like the rest of our time talking, what is Pokemon Showdown, and how is that different from playing Pokemon on a cartridge?
So when you play Pokemon as a kid, you will see some like weird options that are like enabling Wi-Fi. The game is saving now. And when I was a kid, I was like, I don't care about any of that. I'm just trying to explore and train my Pokemon, catch cute little guys. But since Generation 4, you've been able to battle against other people over Wi-Fi. And even since Generation 1, the link cable, you can battle against your friends. It's a core part of the series.
It's not Wi-Fi. That's more like a LAN battle.
Exactly, yeah. The problem is the way Game Freak, the developers of the Pokemon games, have designed their game to make a team that is fully competitively viable if everyone is playing to win and following the same rules, to make a team that is going to give you the best chance of winning against someone who has equal experience, you would need to put in so much time and energy. So people usually, when they want to play competitively, and especially when they want to use a lot of different teams and not just one team of 6, instead of having to take all the time to train, get the TMs, go buy the items, you have to not just give your Pokemon XP, but you have to battle the right Pokemon, because when you battle a Geodude, you get more defensive, and when you battle a fast Pokemon like Electrode, you get faster. Those are called effort values. Value your Pokemon gains their stats from their effort. You can just decide all those things in a simulator. That simulator is Pokemon Showdown. There's been multiple iterations of battle simulators. There was one called Pokemon Online. Then there was one called Shoddy Battle, SHODDY Battle. But Pokemon Showdown, unlike those other two, has so many more incredible features. It has animations for your Pokemon. All of the moves are animated. It has accessible ladders, chat rooms, easy links to the main competitive Pokemon forum called Smogon and that whole community. It has hundreds of different formats you can play, and you can even, if you want to get super custom and crazy, you can program your own servers. It's all open source with your own rule sets. Add your own Pokemon, and you can even challenge your friends with custom battle commands to push the possibilities of what happens in a Pokemon game further than you would be able to do on the cartridge. So that's Pokemon Showdown.
And
And
when did you start playing Showdown again? What year?
2019.
Okay, got it.
And the thing with Pokemon Showdown is it's not just a website, it's not even really a game. It is an online space, and I know lots of people who live there, who spend more time on that website in the chat rooms than they do in the city where they live, than they do with their family, especially people who are in college and high school. A lot of, I think, kids who are like not in employment, but not in like rigorous college or high school programs spend upwards of 8, 10, 12 hours a day in these chat rooms engaging with the community, getting their fingers in every little part of it. And it's definitely, a place for people who are chronically terminally online. But it's also a place where people can find acceptance and community and people who share interests with them.
So what was it like in 2019 when you what was this space like when you started going there in 2019? Tell us about
Yeah.
what it was like then. As hopefully you can lead us into by the end of the talk what it's like to be uh in Showdown now. Yeah, what
Yeah.
was it like when you got there?
The space is a little different now than it was 5 years ago, but it's overall relatively the same. There's just more people who play these days. Um, the interesting thing about Pokemon Showdown is it's a very deep game that is tied into the largest media franchise in the world. I always like to say the only thing bigger than Pokemon is the Bible. Um, and yet there is zero bar to entry for people who want to play on their computer. All they need is an internet connection, and even a low quality device can run this website. You can even turn the animations off if it's too much for your computer. And so it is a more diverse community than a lot of other gaming communities where you need to pay $60 for a game and own a PlayStation and have PlayStation Plus and have a TV that can run it or something like that. You can play Pokemon on a phone from anywhere in the world. And I do play with people literally from every country on the planet. Pokemon Showdown's demographics are such that um, anyone, no matter what your class is, your social class or your financial status is, you can participate and win. There is an event called the World Cup, the World Cup of Pokemon, where players join together with other people from the same country and battle against other teams from other countries to crown a victor. And it's not always like in the World Cup, it's not always the same countries winning all over and over again, and it's not just the countries that you would think would have more affluence, more access to computers or even free time necessarily, but teams from South Asia have won a lot of times. Teams from Africa have won. So it does really represent a global gaming community in a way that other places don't. That's something that I really love about it. But that's a long digression on demographics. Other than that, age ranges vary wildly. Lots and lots of kids, but also lots of people who are older who have spent a lot of their youth there. There's so many different sub communities. If you look through the Smogon forums, they're called. There's communities about every different way of battling. Communities about making art, about telling stories, about playing in different kinds of ways. And there's good and bad parts to it, like any other community. There have been lots of cheating scandals, lots of people who impersonate someone else on Discord or who develop a lot of social clout and sentiment, and then people have been canceled within the Pokemon community. There's lots and lots of YouTubers who are in many ways community figureheads who kind of hold down communities and well, they're YouTubers. What else do I have to say? But there are YouTubers from every different side of this community. So there's the media to that. There are official tournaments. VGC, Video Game Championships is what it's called, where that's people who largely play in real life for real money, for real prizes thrown by the Pokemon company. But there's also people who play in big, high-stakes money tournaments that are not sanctioned by the official Pokemon company, and they play in radically different formats. There's people who only play in tournaments like this, and there's people who only play on the random matchmaking ladder. If there's one thing that I can really say to sum up like what the Pokemon community was when I joined it that drew me in and is now is no matter how you want to approach the game, no matter how you want to play, there is going to be a multitude of different uh, beautiful options, a bouquet, a menagerie of intricately designed little formats for people to play that will fit their personal goals and joys in gaming.
That's pretty beautiful. I mean, you said like you had like a digression about class, but I think it is interesting that like Pokemon is one is yeah, like you're saying like the Bible, Coca-Cola maybe, you know what I mean? It's like it's like a brand on that level. And that is to say that you do need like a Switch and a $60 game if you want to play competitively. But what it sounds like to me is that like the community wanted to be able to open up competitive Pokemon so bad they just did it themselves.
Yes.
Which I can't think of another time in a game that's happened.
Oh yeah, I think a lot of it comes down to the very particular culture of Game Freak. It's a very conservative um, company.
Game Freak
Unlike
are the Pokemon people?
yes, unlike almost any other competitive game that has a scene where people compete for money, Game Freak only rebalances their games. They only patch it every few years. Unlike a game like Hearthstone is buffing and nerfing cards constantly. Most competitive games do that. And it's not even really like a Japanese thing necessarily, because there's companies in Japan that balance their game like that as well. It's really just Game Freak. And they also make the competitive game less accessible than almost any other competitive game I've ever seen. You want to play Smash? You just play Smash. The beauty of Pokemon is that you get to build your team and customize all these different details of it. But you have to do that by playing the game, interacting with the systems. And that oftentimes takes 10, 15, 20 hours. In older games, it may have taken upwards of 100 hours to get the Pokemon for one tournament. But the community for Pokemon is so big, so hungry to play this game, to play it in so many different ways, that they said, we need a simulator. We need a faster way to do this. We want to get all of the juicy, joyful, strategic choices without having to put in all this time. And we'll sacrifice the better graphics to have that option.
That's so fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
That really
and
is it. Yeah, it like flies in the face of like what people think people think like video games are all guns graphics, you know? Or like there's a stereotype about video games like that. Yeah.
Yeah. It's honestly a lot more similar to like a board gaming community, where even within board games, people prefer games that have like nice quality and stuff like that, good art. But within board games, it's like, okay, we're playing with cardboard and stuff like that. I'm not being immersed into the graphics like I would in a game like Elden Ring or Journey or something like that. There's no soundtrack to most board games. So it is a lot about like who you're spending time with, the choices you're making, the strategy, the cold, hard, logical decision making to prove your strategic prowess over other competitors. And it is kind of an equalizer in that way. I don't think it was a super intentional decision by the people who created Pokemon Online, Shoddy Battle, and Pokemon Showdown to make it something that is intentionally appealing, a gaming community accessible to everyone, but it is something that happened, and I think it is so beautiful that I have friends all over the world now that I play the game with.
Yeah, it's if that was an accident, it's cool to have it on accident.
Oh yeah. Definitely not an accident now.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. You can tell. I mean, like the talking about the World Cup. I'm like that's like I like to say that like X is the World Cup of Y. You know what I mean? But like that really is like the closest I've heard to like a video game approaching World Cup like nations unified status.
Totally, yeah. And I think it does bear a lot of similarities. Pokemon does to organized sports. It's just such a big thing that you can play so many different ways. And the way I like to play what's called a draft league is Pokemon's version of fantasy football, where you play as a coach You're the one in the driver's seat making the choices, and you draft a team of players that are your Pokemon, and that's your roster of your box, you could say, your PC if you've played the Pokemon games, and then you choose. Pardon me, gonna burp. You choose just 6 of those every week that you take on a different roster, a different player's box, and you perform a round robin tournament, just like a NFL season or something like that. Go to a playoffs and crown a champion, and that's where a lot of these storylines come out of.
How many Pokemon on do you draft total?
It depends. Usually the average is between 10 and 12. So you kind of choose half your Pokemon every week to be your starting 6 that are coming to the battle, and some Pokemon are less competitively good, and so you have to choose the right context for them to show up. Some Pokemon are really good that end up on your roster, and you want to bring them every week. But you follow the narrative of these Pokemon that are less popular, that find the chance to be in the spotlight when the opponent's team maybe has a weakness that Pokemon has particular strengths and is able to exploit.
So rewind just a little bit. So you started watching draft league videos when you were like 19, and you fell in love with like the narrative that was going on by having these like Pokemon you come back to week.
Exactly.
How did you start playing? How did you start like actually playing in draft battles?
Yeah. For draft leagues, they lend themselves really well to YouTube, and there were these YouTube draft leagues where you get a once per week battle. It's content. People know the person you're battling against, so they're following the storyline the whole time. It's just like following a sports team. One of those YouTubers had a Discord server. I joined that server, and within the first day, somebody had posted, "Hey, I'm running a draft league, but somebody dropped out. Can anybody here fill the spot?" And I said, me, please. I thought I was so lucky. Little did I know there are hundreds and hundreds of draft leagues out there all the time.
Oh,
You just know where to look. But for a long time, it was really quite hidden. It was hard to find your way in. People on YouTube would always comment, like, how do I find and play in one of these myself? And being on the other side of it, I would be like, holy shit, I feel like I've had times in my life that I was playing as a coach in as many as 10 draft leagues at the same time. I know people who are in like 20 or 30 leagues that battle these games multiple times per day. That's usually kids who don't have a job, who don't have to work. And it does kind of desensitize you to the narratives. If you're playing so many different teams at once, you forget about the stories of the different leagues you're in. You forget to keep them straight. That's what I love about the VBL, which is just every Pokemon League has a little acronym name, like the NFL or the NHL or the NBA. We have the GBA, Game Boy Advanced, or the WPF, World Pokemon Federation, or the VBL. The BL stands for Battle League. I'm a moderator of the server, and I have no idea what the V stands for.
Oh, okay.
But that's a league that I play in.
There goes my next question.
That's a league I play in with Dr. James Dalton Bell, and he may even chime in chat for what the V means. I think it's victory. But that league is really special to me because the community cares so much about the storylines. We don't have people who are playing in 10 other leagues. We have people who just care about VBL, and it's this little community of usually 32 people at a time who are coaches in this league, who are all intently focused on every battle that's going on, following people's stories, following the meteoric rise of a new coach who comes in, doesn't know what they're doing at the beginning of the season, and ends up sweeping the entire thing because of their incredibly powerful draft and because of their ability to adapt and learn the format, of people who are a 16-year-old kid who is the like Gary Oak, incredibly scary, like 6-time champion that nobody can hold a candle to. There's a guy in our server His name is Kian Campbell. He got third place at the Los Angeles Regional Championship. He had an incredible performance at the World Championships. These are the official Pokemon Company sanctioned battles, and yet he battles with us in our tiny little community. He works with some of the best Pokemon players in the entire world, but he sticks around VBL, and sometimes it does feel good to beat him because it's like, if I beat him, I could beat anyone.
So what was like the origins of VBL or your start in VBL? You can answer it either way, but like let's get into VBL because a lot of people in chat are here to hear about VBL. VBL heads rise up. A lot of people want to hear about VBL. So and I think the gamers want to hear about VBL, but I think also the people, the more folklore people who want to hear the cutting edge research about these online groups sharing culture could also learn a lot from VBL. So give us your introduction with all that in mind.
So VBL is a community of, there's about, I think, 60 people in the server, but every season that we run, a season is just like in real life, a football season would be, you play a round robin against the other teams, you have a playoffs, you have a champion. Every season is about 32 people. So let's just zoom out for a second.
Mm-hmm.
The entire Pokemon fandom is about 2 to 3 billion people are Pokemon fans on the planet. Pikachu is one of the most universal words on the planet. You zoom into competitive Pokemon, a tiny subset of the whole Pokemon community that doesn't involve shiny hunters, that doesn't involve Pokemon artists. Excuse me. Of course, there's overlap, but the competitive Pokemon is people who play against each other instead of just playing the game by themselves. We zoom in further to a specific format of competitive Pokemon. We'll take the 2v2 format, which is also the official competitive format, but that is only a small subset of all the ways you can play. You can play 1v1 like you would most of the time in the video game. You can play 3v3. You can play Pokemon Unite. You can play the trading card game, all these different ways to play. Okay, we have 2v2 battles like the official format. We zoom down into the world of draft leagues specifically, these kinds of leagues, which, just to define it quickly, you put together your roster of 11 Pokemon, but you have a limited amount of money. You can spend money on expensive players, but you don't have enough money to... Yeah, it's fake money. Everyone has the same budget. But you can't fill your roster with expensive players, or you can spend it on budget picks. So you have to balance, do I spend it on some mid-price guys, some expensive guys, some cheap guys? How do I do it? Do I get all expensive guys and a bunch of like $1 babies? How do I do it with the intent of creating oppressive synergy? So that's Draft League. And then coaches play against each other's rosters, and so they build a team that's unique every week, a team of 6 that is meant to counter-team the other person, which is where incredible creativity comes from, excitement. We call it heat, because it's like, oh my god, that was so hot. It burned me the way you came up with something truly novel, creative, innovation. And also people are able to express their play style, their personality through their choices, through their team. VBL, then, is just one such draft league where people play the official 2v2 format within competitive Pokemon. And it is a small draft league. There are some draft leagues servers that have as many as 1,000 or 2,000 members. I used to be a moderator of the biggest draft league server, which is WPF, the World Pokemon Federation. I moderate a few other draft leagues as well. The Battle Frontier and Resort is the one that I am the admin of, which started as a fundraiser for the NAACP Legal Defense Fund during the Black Lives Matter movement protests during COVID. I'm a moderator of a different league called the Untitled Draft League. That is a community that is even smaller than the VBL. I'm in a league right now with only 10 people because we couldn't get more signups than that. And then the VBL itself, which is where we'll focus a lot of attention, has, for my money, just the best Pokemon community, competitive Pokemon community that you can find. People really do love the official tournament circuit because they get to meet people in real life. So that's, in my opinion, kind of a separate entity. But as far as like Discord first communities where you're mostly talking to people who you've never met before, who you have only seen their face on the YouTube videos they make, no community has people that are as engaged, as passionate about the game, as excited to make content for each other and watch content as high effort as the VBL. The way you find your way to a league is always interesting, but you do a league with one person, and then that person talks about a league they were in, and you say, "Hey, can you send me invite to that league?" And then you hop over there, and then you find yourself moving from little league community to different community. VBL is quite isolated, I would say. It's kind of an island in the greater draft league community. Many people have only ever played in the VBL. Myself, I've played in a lot of different draft leagues. I started in one that I came from that YouTuber many years ago. That one led me to starting another one. I did one through a subscriber Patreon Discord for Wolf Glick, the best Pokemon player in the world.
Yeah, a name I know.
Yes.
A name the layman would recognize.
A many-time draft league champion on YouTube. Which is why, to me, he's the greatest Pokemon player in the world, not because of his consistency in the official format, not because of the money he's made. But I'll give a shout out here to my friend The Jordan, who makes wonderful videos on draft league battling in particular on YouTube. And I battled with him in a draft league, loved his videos, and he kept talking so positively about the VBL. I said, well, damn, I have to join this freaking server. And to this day, we get people who get his videos recommended and they come to the server because he's right. It's the best competitive Pokemon community that you can find out there. I joined and lurked for a while. It was around season 6. We're on season 14 now. That I joined the server. I thought it was really cool, really interesting, but I had other communities that I was moderating that I was in charge of, and I didn't want to pull too much focus from them. But then VBL did a league that was an even more esoteric format than what we're already talking about. So not only is it a 2v2 doubles draft league, VGC style competitive Pokemon, but it was, as opposed to letting you use all the Pokemon, it was using the Pokemon from the Pokédex of the Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl video game instead of the Pokemon Sword and Shield video game, which was a remake of the old games I grew up with, the Pokemon Diamond and Pearl. They remade those games with new graphics, but you were able to play online in this 2v2 style with modern mechanics. The mechanics for Pokemon change every few years, every generation. And I love it when the Pokemon you're able to use change, because it makes things feel fresh. You discover new strategies, new combinations. What is strong in one format when certain Pokemon are allowed is different from another format where certain Pokemon are allowed. And I really wanted to play this. It's called a lower power level because a lot of the strongest Pokemon aren't around. Was Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl Pokédex. That's when I joined VBL, and I've played in the majority of seasons that they've had since then, and since then become a moderator, and I've even made some videos as part of the community.
So, and what year was this that you joined VBL?
Oh, that's a good question. I think it was 2021.
Okay.
Member since August 15th, 2021. Yep.
Excellent. Okay. So you had many years of Pokemon in general, many years of being able to see a toenail and be like, that's Tropius or whatever. Then you had another 2 years of another 2 years of draft battles under your belt, but of course, like, that second year was 2020, so it probably felt like you were probably doing that a lot in 2020. Am I right?
The reason, probably more than anything, that I was so excited to come on this interview is because for me in 2020, Draft League saved my life, and communities like this saved a lot of people during COVID. Because there's this low barrier to access, people just talk about it all day. They find their way to these communities, and they're just online ready to talk about Pokemon. Because the communities are so diverse, they tend to be pretty accepting. And so for a queer person like me, it tends to be a really safe space. I found a lot of other kind of queer, gender non-conforming Pokemon fans in the community through doing like draft leagues like this. Having people to talk to, having something simple, a little childish, a little silly, but so deep to sink your teeth into, means you can just in some contexts you end up wasting your life away just focusing on competitive Pokemon, on all the intricacies. There's a really interesting video from uh, the only other person that has a claim to be the best Pokemon player in the world. His name is Mikael Kelsch. He just uploaded a video about how his mental health has tanked so much from being burnt out on playing competitive Pokemon and team building for 10 hours a day. It's a really interesting watch as like a case study on the pressure on people who are at the top, and also how he almost has become numb to the feeling of success and now only cares about the success of his friends. But also having something that you can really sink your teeth into, it distracts you from malaise. And in my case, I was in a abusive relationship during COVID, and I was living with this person and didn't see anyone else. Didn't see any friends, didn't see family. Of course, we were isolating, but we were doing so. She was high risk, and so we were extremely careful. We were inside almost all the time. And so the only option that I had, the only escape, the only thing that brought me any joy and gave me an escape from the pretty consistent like um, abuse and pain I was experiencing was talking to my friends. Some of those friends are in chat right now. My friend Fadi, who suggested Furret, was one of those people that I talk to all the time. I think my friend Brian, who goes by Eon on Discord, is here as well. Talking to those guys, making friends, playing leagues with them, talking to them sometimes on voice chat, gave me community when there was no community to be found. And it kind of needed to be something this esoteric because I was scared of a community that was bigger than a couple dozen people. But when you get and you drill down so low, you have people from all over the country, all over the world, who are interested in these tiny little niche things that you can debate and discuss for hours and hours and hours, the infinite options of strategy. And it the acceptance gave me something to do with my life, something to focus on and to find joy and passion and excitement, and made me realize that I wanted to be a game designer and a game developer in my future.
Wow, that's beautiful.
Mhm.
It really is. It really is. That was like a where so that was like a there was a context for like how you spent your 2020, but also what like supercharged your love of like this style of playing Pokemon. So
Mhm.
we get to late 2021. James in chat says BDSP season started at the end of January 2022. So take us to like that part of your Pokemon journey. Take us to like when you started playing with this with I would say server, but it sounds like with this like community. Yeah.
Yeah. So VBL was not my first draft league community, but it is a draft league community that I call home now.
Mm.
I started playing in the, like I said, the Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl season, and a lot of leagues have this problem. This is how I joined the first league: is somebody dropped out, and they needed to find somebody to take that spot. Because people are notoriously unreliable on the internet. They're anonymous. They leave the server. Whatever. There's no consequences, especially, excuse me, when you're dealing with a lot of children, which tends to be pretty common for this community. There's a wide range of ages, but VBL has our youngest player, I think, is 15. We had a player once who was 13 who had to take a break from. He was in the middle of a match, a high stakes battle, and he said, "Sorry guys, I have to go for a second. My mom needs to cut my hair," which I remember struck me because, you know, James, I believe, is in his early 20s, and lots of folks in the VBL server are older and have kids, they have wives, they have families. You can see the full range of life and how people grow up. You can find mentors and people to offer mentorship within this little community. The thing with VBL that I love is that we didn't have any drops. People hardly ever leave the league.
Wow.
Because it's like one of those communities for me, it was like theater in high school. I was friends with some people who would play flag football at lunch, and then I was friends with a bunch of people who played League of Legends, and then I was friends with people who played board games or whatever, and then I found myself into the theater community, and I was like, oh, this is where I meant to rest. This is where I meant to stay. This is where I find belonging, because it's the most accepting, the most excited, um, the most wholesome and good-natured competition you'll find, and that's I think the thing that is so special about the VBL. The reason that I stayed part of the server, participated in more seasons, and even welcomed the opportunity to become a moderator, is because everybody wants to stay. It's the best community, and that's in a lot of ways thanks to Samax, who was in chat, who suggested the Primarina on our little battle before our interview.
So, when one plays Pokemon, I don't know what you would say, normatively by the book, the way Game Freak is trying to get you to play it, there's one narrative. You know, it's like the get 8 badges, fight the champion, become the champion, right? In almost every game, it's like that. Maybe break up the mob while you're doing it. What I think sounds so interesting about draft leagues, about VBL, is that you keep saying like what's the word you keep saying is the storylines?
Narratives, yeah.
Narratives, exactly. So there are ways that all of the players, all of like the viewers, everyone is witnessing these narratives come alive that are like alive in the gameplay, and like we've said, it's like comparative. Compared to the actual like console Pokemon experience, the gameplay is very different. But I love how everyone is using these like agreed upon like touch points to like make this narrative emerge out of Pokemon Showdown. So can you recall for us some of your favorite narratives that you've watched happen over the course of a season?
This is a brilliant question. Thank you for asking it. Another one of my favorite things about VBL is how people take the competition so seriously. They really are engaged with it, and there are stakes. And at the same time, they acknowledge that it's just a game, and they take it completely unseriously. What I mean by that is a coach who goes by the name OMG It's Daddy, in one of the very early seasons of the VBL, decided to draft an 11 Pokemon team that was exclusively bug types.
Excellent.
Bug types are the worst type in Pokemon. They're bad. And he drafted only bug types because he thought it would be fun, because he thought it would be a way to spice things up, keep it exciting. It's called a challenge draft is what we call it now. And he may have been the first person to do a challenge like that, I'm not sure, but him doing that, at least for me, that's the first I recall in VBL's history. A better VBL historian than me can correct me there in chat. But it set off a wave within the VBL community of people doing all kinds of fun challenges to make their draft more interesting. And you find these storylines of how do you make it work? How do you find success with these weird Pokemon, with these options? The most recent one that I did, at least that I was successful in, was I did a draft league where I asked my girlfriend what her favorite Pokemon were. And she gave me a list of about 25 Pokemon that she said she really liked. Usually when you're drafting, you have, at any given moment to assemble your team of 11, about 400 different reasonable options. And I cut it down to 20. And those 20 had terrible synergy with each other. They did not work together. My team was super bad in a lot of ways. I am obsessed with crafting the perfect team of 11, finding a way for them to all cover each other's weaknesses perfectly. And I have to do challenge seasons for myself like this because I will spend days and days and days in the team builder thinking of every possible combination of 11 Pokemon to make the perfect draft. Because it's like giving yourself the best tools to set yourself up for success. And then you just get unlucky anyways, and it's all for naught. But that's Pokemon. But I drafted all of my girlfriend's favorite Pokemon. The team was horrifically unoptimized. And yet, somehow, I kept winning. I didn't think it was going to be because I didn't think I would be able to do well, but I made it to the playoffs. And then I won my first game. Then I won the second game, and suddenly I found myself in finals. And in finals, it was a knockout, and I won the finals and was crowned the champion of this draft league, which is a very hard thing to do. It's being the top performer out of 12, 16, or 32 people, and the only explanation I have is that it was the power of love. During my playoffs battles, she doesn't know anything about competitive, but she would join Pokemon Showdown. Her nickname would be I love Jason XOXO or something like that. And she would say, "Go Jace, you got this." And then I would win. And the team was named after her, and it was my I think it was my second or third time winning that draft league. And I was like, well, okay, yeah, that was my third championship for that draft league, which is called RTT, which is short for Redeem the Trash. There was some shout outs in chat earlier, where we only use bad Pokemon. You're not allowed to use good ones. So it was her favorite Pokemon minus any of them that were good at all, which narrowed my list down even more. But I won that. I named my team after her, and then at the next season, I was like, well, I'm sticking with this name. Kept that name, and then won again with the team named after her. It wasn't all of her favorites that time, but I did draft Mudkip, her absolute favorite Pokemon.
Oh hell yeah!
And since then, she's been my my good luck charm in that way. So that's just one narrative.
Who was on the team?
Yeah.
Who were her favorites?
Oh, maybe. Okay. Mickey's Mudkip's roster consisted of the Pokemon Moltres, the Pokemon Mesprit, the Pokemon.
Okay, can you break him down? I say for the Shirleys of the audience who might think Moltres is some sort of like, I don't know, like cocktail. No,
yes, of
Google
course.
works.
Google works, but I mean, no. Do not click away from this Twitch stream or this YouTube video.
Dominic, I have 3 screens.
Oh, I didn't mean you specifically. I meant people who might be following. People who are following on the folklore side.
Absolutely.
Sorry to make that about you specifically, Charles. I didn't mean it like that.
I will break down these Pokemon, no problem. Okay. The number one Pokemon that I picked, my first pick was a Pokemon that those of us watching the stream from the beginning will be very familiar with, the Pokemon Furret.
Oh, hell
He's
yeah.
very long.
We love him.
He's very adorable. He's a little ferret Pokemon. And in the particular context of this draft league, you get rid of all the good Pokemon, so you're only left with bad Pokemon. Who rises to the top? Furret, baby. Furret was one of the best Pokemon in the league, genuinely.
Nice.
And he performed a great supportive role by saying, whenever I'm on the field, you can't attack the guy next to me, you have to attack me instead. Which let my Pokemon... Follow Me is the name of the move.
There we go.
Yeah. Then I had the Pokemon Mesprit. Mesprit is a legendary Pokemon, and you might think legendary Pokemon are good. No. Mesprit's very bad. But in the low power format, Mesprit has a niche. It is a floating pixie with 3 tails and pink hair.
Okay, it's the pink one.
Moltres is the Pokemon on my team that would be the closest to being considered good. It is also a legendary Pokemon, but it cost me the maximum amount of my budget.
Okay.
So
how much fake money was that?
I had a total of it was $110, and it cost me $20.
Got it.
So the average Pokemon was costing me 10. This one costs double that, because I have 11 on the team. So Furret, Mesprit, Moltres. Moltres is it's a big chicken and it's on fire. And guy.
It's a big chicken.
Next was the Pokemon Sneasel. Sneasel is an ice and dark type. It's a little weasel, and it's got big claws, and it's always looks like it's winking at you.
Yeah.
He's very fast and kind of strong.
Yeah, Sneasel's always kind of serving with like the wink and the claw. Yeah.
Exactly. My next Pokemon was the Pokemon Glaceon, an evolution
Lovely.
of the Pokemon Eevee. One of my girlfriend's favorite Pokemon, and I think at the time the only of her favorite Pokemon that I was able to draft, or like her favorite of the ones that I had,
Yeah.
because I couldn't get Mudkip. I couldn't get Mudkip until Game Freak put it back in the game. Next was Sudowoodo, the rock tree that blocks your way in Generation 2 games.
That's right.
Sudowoodo.
The fake
Sudowoodo,
tree?
it's a rock type, but it looks like a tree because it's pseudo, it's fake. The next Pokemon was Drifblim, which evolves from Drifloon, the little purple balloon Pokemon that you would get in the 4th generation. That Pokemon is not very good, but it has a lot of cool, interesting niches, and I have pardon me, wow, I've got a lot of burps going on. A lot of lovely history with Drifblim. It means a lot to me as a Pokemon. Then the Pokemon Monferno, the pre-evolution of Infernape. That Pokemon is not very expensive since he's not even fully evolved.
Yeah.
But he's got a lot of use. Then for $2, the Pokemon Dragonair, the pre-evolved form of Dragonite. A very long, majestic, snake-like dragon Pokemon that turned out to be kind of the MVP of this team, even though it only cost 2 points, $2. It was huge for me. That's another one of these narratives, is even within the narrative of the whole team, an individual Pokemon like Dragonair, I never brought it to games. I never thought it was worth dropping one of my more expensive Pokemon because you only get to bring 6. But in the very end of the season, in my final couple games, I realized Dragonair was incredible in those matchups, and it brought home a championship.
Oh, wow.
Even in the lower power level, it only costs $2. It's terrible. The Pokemon on my team that was truly unbringable and terrible was Pico, Wingull, the pre-evolved version of Pelipper. It's a little, it's just a seagull. It's literally just a seagull. It's called Wingull because it's a gull with wings.
He steals your French
Totally
fries.
useless. Exactly. I tried to bring it to a battle once, didn't go so well, but he was there for moral support. And finally, the Pokemon Luxio, the pre-evolved form of Luxray. So that was my team.
Luxray, one of your favorites from the first game you played too.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So that was my my championship-winning team there, and I've got lots of championship teams that I've loved.
How do they set the prices?
That is one of my passions in this community.
Oh, go for it.
Yeah, I've found so many parts of Draft League, of running leagues in particular, involve game design, involve looking at a spreadsheet. And through Draft League, I learned how to be a total master of Google Sheets. So I know how to code now, at least in Google Sheets programming, which is not the same thing as real coding, but it's similar. Just through trying to have the best performing, most functional league documentation that we could. That's where you track stuff like stats and the schedule of who battles everyone each week in the standings. Setting the prices, we call it tiering. Which tier do you put something in? The $20 tier, the $19 tier. Historically, Draft Leagues only had 5 tiers, the S, A, B, C, D, and they cost different dollar points. We do it much more granularly now. But tiering is a huge community effort, a huge act of community game design, saying we want to make this as balanced as possible. We have this beautiful balancing mechanism where we can change the price of each of these Pokemon, and it's so granular that, like, for example, in Hearthstone, the mana cost from one card to another card is a huge difference. But from 20 points to 19 points, or $19 in a Draft League, not that big of a deal. So you can really get granular about how much each Pokemon should cost to make sure that the league is totally fair and balanced. And so usually you'll have a team of 2 to 30 people all paying attention to every single Pokemon in the Pokédex, doing research on them, looking at the whole draft board, which is just a visual representation of all the Pokemon and their prices and whether or not they are available to draft, since each Pokemon can only be taken by one coach. And we'll debate, we'll go back and forth. Different people have different, we call it tiering ideologies. there's drafting ideologies, but there's like, I could write an entire thesis on how to construct a good, what's called draft board, how you should price Pokemon. Because there's so many nuances on how you balance a game like this. How expensive should a Pokemon that is bad be? It takes up a slot on your team. Is that a cost enough? Should any bad Pokemon just cost one? Or is there granularity between something like a Magikarp that does nothing or something like a Dragonair that can do a lot? How expensive can the Pokemon go? If one Pokemon is far and away the best, do you just say nobody can use this, it's banned, it's broken? Or do you say, oh, it costs 30 points. Whoever gets it has to pay that much. Do you try to make it so that every Pokemon has the right price? Do you try to make it so that there are good options available at different prices and kind of massage things a little bit? It's a act of constantly tweaking values back and forth, having Pokemon move around a little bit to make sure everything is priced fairly. And I could literally talk for hours and hours and hours about all of the different details of this, all of the different iterations. I'm in the league where I won with the team. It's called Mickey's Mudkips that had that I went through all the Pokemon in. We draft a different way, where it's not even a turn by turn draft, but everyone picks their Pokemon at the same time. And if you pick the same thing as someone else, then we have a system for reconciling that. But otherwise, you're not like snaking, doing a snake draft like you would in a like a football or some sort of other like official sports organization. Yeah, that's one of those rabbit holes that goes incredibly deep. And the team building rabbit hole of which 6 Pokemon you bring, what stats they have, what items they have, what ability they have, and what moves they run, that rabbit hole goes even deeper.
Man, that's like my impulse is like, okay, let you talk for 2 more hours. Let you talk at thesis length about draft boards. But I'm sure there are more things we have to get into. We're talking about storylines. We're talking about things that emerge. I mean, but it is an example of like things that emerge from like the format you've created that like the official game would not be able to comprehend. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Does my audio sound okay? I bumped my mic.
Yeah, you sound fine.
Okay, great. Yeah, I think it's something interesting happened in the official battling for money Pokemon circuit, which is that a series of unknown players won these huge championships. These championships are usually won by players with a lot of experience. People like Wolf Glick wins championships all the time. But winning one of these championships is being the best player out of 600 people, 700 people, 800 people. Being the best out of that many people is an unbelievable feat of team building, playing skill, and luck as well.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this thing that happened where a player named Justin Tang won his very first regional, and then he won another regional a few weeks later. There's some more examples of this, but the other one that is fresh in my mind is a player named Nicholas Morales, who played his first ever in-person tournament and won the whole thing a few weeks ago. Nicholas Morales is somebody who I have hung out with in person when I was visiting New York City. We hung out in Times Square with a bunch of other people who we played Draft League together with. And, you know, he's got one persona online and such a different persona in real life, but he's such a sweet guy. I think the Pokemon community in some ways fell in love with him because he's so kind of bashful and humble when he won this enormous tournament in Baltimore recently. But Justin Tang and Nicholas Morales were both unknown players who had spent years playing Draft League, and Draft League prepares you for this, like for these competitions with these high prize pools like nothing else, because you have to be prepared for every possibility. You have to know what every single Pokemon does in every single format, because you're always going to get caught off guard at these formats, at these tournaments. You start to internalize, it's almost like a muscle or a sixth sense, a sense for how much damage attacks are going to do. We call them head calcs, where I can say to you, a Dragapult that is fully invested using U-turn against a Eviolite Dragonair with full investment is going to do about 26%. That may not be correct, but to know roughly how much damage something is going to do before it happens, it literally feels like a muscle that you work out. In chat, Sempra is the other player who came out of nowhere, who had never performed in the online circuit before and in the official circuit before, and won a tournament because he had a draft league experience. A coach that I beat in a tournament, as well as Nicholas Morales, who I've beaten, and he's beaten me many times as well. But it just cuts your teeth and stretches your Pokemon knowledge to the very, very, very depths of what you have possible, because you're facing a different combination of Pokemon. You're solving a different crazy puzzle every single battle, every single league, every single format, every single week.
I guess what I want to ask about that is, like, how is that Pokemon knowledge that you're, like, exploring the depths of to win like that? How is that, like, come on, Dom. What's the phrase I'm looking for? Like a community-centered objective. You know what I mean? Like, how is that, like, representative of, like, the actual goals that Pokemon players have for Pokemon and why they join a draft league? Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I think it's an interesting question. The question of, like, what is your goal from a draft league? People do it because they want to have fun, because they want to join a community, maybe because they want to test their mettle and be the best. And along the way, you end up learning a lot. You end up making friends and growing, and having a deep, deep, deep well of knowledge. I think that, like, all of that internalized information is that kind of, like, it's like institutional knowledge. It's almost knowledge that is passed down from older player to newer player. Somebody will know about a mechanic and then be like, young one, you didn't know how this was going to happen. Let me teach you. But it really is mostly all of that stuff that you learn about all these obscure mechanics and historical formats and the context of Pokemon, both the actual hard and fast way the game is programmed and the meta game, the context. That's just all information you need to be good at the game. Pokemon is unique in that, well, it's unique in a lot of ways, but it is a turn-based game in which your action is executed at the same time as another player's action, and so you need to be able to react to what they're going to do before they've done it.
Mm-hmm.
You need to make a prediction for what you think they're going to do. Predicting their moves, what their possible moves might be, and covering for those options. Understanding both turn-by-turn dynamics and overall play patterns. These dynamics are what you need to be good at the game, to be able to perform at the highest level. And it is such a deep, endless well, especially in this custom draft league format that we've created and that we play, and that we find brings out the most joy and the idealized version of Pokemon fandom.
Yeah.
Becoming good at it is, in a lot of ways, a community coming together to solve a puzzle, climb a mountain, if you will. It's a shared objective and goal, and we celebrate each other's victories and commiserate each other's losses as well.
Two things I want to add to that. One is that I looked at Shirley when you said be the very best, and I'm like, do something. I can see you, like, nodding your head in time. I know you were saying that. Very good. Very good. The other thing that I think was so, like, important for this being like a folklore talk show, usually, and this is like a video game talk show, but we are, like, people who've studied folklore asking the questions, you know what I mean? That, like, when you were describing the way you learn to play, like a custom draft league, you said like these strategies, you're plumbing the depths, you're going real deep, and you said a lot about like an older player passing it down to a younger player. You know what I mean? And that's very much like
Yeah.
that's like a video game generation there, you know what I mean? But that's like very much like a kind of folklore transmission of like here's insider knowledge that like that like someone in your community is going to pass down or pass along to you. And I think
Yeah.
you can't get that out of like when Professor Oak doesn't do that to you. Professor Oak is a line of code. You know what I mean? Like in the game he's a line of code, but you have like your people in your community who will be like your real life Pokemon professor in a way the game could never do.
It's a culture.
Yeah.
And a culture is people, and you don't have people when you play a video game by yourself, but as soon as you welcome other people into it, especially because this is something that I haven't mentioned yet. Playing Draft League, so much of it is spent crafting your team to counter team your opponent. It's an act of creativity, it's an act of creation, and you can't do it alone. You will do it with your friends. You'll say, guys, what do we think about this? You'll work together as a team. I'm in multiple different servers that are just people working together to help each other find holes in their builds and collaborate on coming up with choices. That's honestly where so much of the community is happening, is people working together to help each other do the best they can in the battles. The stakes are low, but the gains are so high from spending all this time becoming close with people, and
Yeah.
people all over the world who play Draft League make these like long-term friends from that. I think in being a culture, there's vocabulary. A lot of these conversations that people have with terminology, even different names for Pokemon. Tyranitar is too much to type, so we just type T-Tar.
T-Tar.
Dragonite is just D-Knight. It becomes a whole world that you live inside of, and I am really intrigued by the fact that for some people, these tiny little insular communities, they speak in this language more than they speak to other people. They look at this screen and live in this world of these battles. The battles are more important to them than their real life successes. It does become like its own little world in a way that can be scary and can be beautiful.
Can I read some comments from chat that I think are doing a good job illustrating that point?
Please, please, please.
All right. So Darioth, long time viewer, says most video games are incredibly obscure without community knowledge, and online competitive games are particularly guilty of that. Imagine learning Dota or another MOBA on your own. It would take lifetimes. And I think that's what's I'm so attracted to about hearing you talk about Pokemon draft leagues, is that we've created, like, here you are creating like the competitive community network, like the community knowledge in a competitive game in an RPG. And I mean, like, yeah, there is like online battling, but it's like it really sounds like you've like that Pokemon has created like these communities that are like, I don't know how to say this, but like these like serious competitive like knowledge communities in a and I don't want you to take this the wrong way, in a game that is not that. You know what I mean?
Totally.
In a game that teaches, in the same game that teaches a 5-year-old the word kowtow, that you also have these like intense community knowledge mechanisms. And I think that is that is so impressive about like what you and everyone is doing. Yeah, it's as much as a framework as an actual game, JDB just said.
Totally. I mean, James doesn't even play anymore. He just hosts live streams and entertains people and engages with the community, because ultimately that's the only reason I still play. I've gotten unlucky and lost tournaments so many times that if I didn't care about the people, I would have rage quit a long time ago. But yeah.
And then what's that James's other comment about we all still use Team Hawk and Ball Hawk hasn't been doing draft league stuff in like 2 years, so there are like there's precedents from other leagues that are just like enshrined like that.
Yeah, there's tools that are passed around. James is referring to I don't know what the term is, a real thing, a tool that is a document, Google Sheets document that is a utility you can use for planning your team. It'll show you, oh, okay, you have 3 fire types and they're all weak to water, so you've got a weakness to water. You better do something about it. It'll tell you, oh, you don't have a Pokemon that can learn the move Swords Dance. You might want one of those. It'll give you a lot of different information to analyze your matchups, and it's such a priceless part of our experience, irreplaceable in how useful it is. I use this document constantly. But I think there's other tools that James is referencing here that you can have that are softer technologies, that are ideas of ways to approach the game. You can see somebody draft a team and play in a way that is unlike anything you've ever seen before, and suddenly your mind has expanded to those opportunities. And the more you play, the more time you spend in the community, the more you learn these things, and it is that thing of passing it down. There's this community has only existed for so long, but there are huge moments in its history that are relevant. One of the most relevant moments to me is every time you do a battle, there's an option to save it as a replay. So you can go back and watch that battle, just like you were playing it in front of you. But everything happens in front of you again. You can relive those moments. Pokemon Showdown is the website where all of these replays live. And earlier this year, the developers messed something up, and they bricked the database. And all of these replays disappeared. And it was... I mean this with no exaggeration. To the Pokemon community, it was like the burning of the Library of Alexandria. Is that right? Library of Alexandria? Yeah.
It was a historic war crime that lost the world knowledge.
It was something on the order of like 40 million replays of data that were lost. And for me, it was my entire history of all of these battles, and I can't go back and watch them anymore. I can't go back and think about all of these crazy things that I had, and so some of them are starting to be lost to memory. Something I love about VBL is that a lot of people record their matches, and so on YouTube, those are the things that are recorded. But I remember all of these games that I played. I battled. There was this mythic figure from the first draft league I played in with a lot of my close friends who I still talk to. We just started a D&D group, some friends that I now talk to regularly over voice, which is kind of a step up in intimacy from usually just connecting over text. But that group of friends, shout out Voltron, if any of you are still in chat. There's Brian, he's there. We met in the draft league that was based on WolfClick's subscriber server, and my friend Foddy won his like kind of first timers division. I was more experienced, so I was playing in another division. I made it to the finals, and I came up against this player who just went by the name Black. And I found later that he had another name that was Kiev, the Ukrainian city. So a man of multiple names. He was mysterious. He never opened up about who he was in person. He never said anything. He was rarely in chat, but he just would dissect you like nobody else in game. He was absolutely unstoppable in how analytical he was about the game. Later on, just more recently, I found out he has like a blog that he used to do and a YouTube channel where I can hear his voice, and it totally changed my perception of him from this like mythic figure to somebody super humanized. But I remember I faced him in multiple leagues. He invited me to some leagues because he was like, I like the cut of your jib, kid. Why don't you join me with these like other weirdos in this like private server? We did a very weird league together, and I ended up battling him in finals. and all of my friends from my Voltron server were in voice call together, watching me in this battle, in this final battle of the league, take on this like mythic giant that none of us had ever beaten before. We battled him multiple times across different leagues, across different seasons, and it was finally my time. I had spent so long working on my build. I had a absolutely crazy creative choice, one of my most creative teams ever, where all of my Pokemon were super offensive, but I trained all of them extremely defensively, not leaning into their strengths at all, but playing them the total opposite of what they're supposed to do, to make them extremely defensive and essentially stall my opponent out. And I played against him. I remember I was sitting in my dad's old house that he sold. He doesn't live there anymore, but there will forever be a stain of my sweat on that floor because I was in the heat for 2 hours overthinking every single choice in this battle. Pokemon battles usually are between like 8 to maybe 40 turns. This battle was up to like turn 200. And I was inch by inch chipping away at my opponent. It was like a chess battle between two grandmasters because he knew he couldn't give me any ground, and I was able to recover any ground that he was able to take from me. But slowly and slowly and slowly, I was able to get one KO, then another. I had all 6 of my Pokemon left. And then 2 hours in, I was so fatigued. I gave him a tiny little inch, and he set up some swords dances and swept the game. And I never played it with him in a league again. And my friends right afterwards, I didn't even realize they had been in chat together at the time, but they were, I joined the voice call and they were screaming at me like, "No, you made the wrong play. You could have done it. Oh my God." And I never ended up beating that guy, but that experience, I think, bonded us together as a little friend group that we have.
Oh my God.
And the battles we shared with him still live as these like kind of mythical historical moments in our experience.
Yeah.
And there's, I mean, countless
incredible.
stories like that. Yeah, both of battles and of just interpersonal things. There's people in these communities who find out that they're trans and are able to like come to terms with their gender identity because they are able to talk to other trans people. There's people who have formed relationships and fallen in love and broken up because they met. That's true for a lot of gaming communities. There's also people who, I remember this one situation where somebody was a prominent community member and then introduced one of their friends to the community. And then a little while later, that friend became somewhat beloved, and that the first person said that their friend had passed away. And everyone mourned this person until it turned out that that person had created this second person and they just wanted to kill their second persona. So they put all of these people through this experience of grief. And it caused this individual to become shunned from a lot of communities.
Whoa.
And then slowly, over the course of 3 or 4 years, they created these, built back the inroads, built back trust, told people that they had grown, that they had learned, and they are now like back in a significant position of power and responsibility in the community after doing this. It was like a sort of a cancellation and then a return after many years, after a lot of people who were there for these events had retired and forgotten and moved on. And, you know, this person was, I think, quite young at the time and didn't really know what they were doing, but people really went through these cycles of grief and redemption. That has really nothing to do with the Pokemon at all. That just has to do with how seriously people take the community, how close they get, how they spend hours and hours and hours just working together, solving a little puzzle. But even if you don't talk about your personal life at all, which of course we do, you end up feeling like you know these people and making friends. And, you know, I've met up with probably, I think, about 10 different people that I have met on Discord in person in Wyoming, in Colorado, in the Bay Area, in New York. And I have friends in Europe and in Asia and in South America as well.
That's so cool. That's incredible.
Yeah, it's been a big part of my life.
Yeah.
And doing all of the all of the balancing, creating all of the spreadsheets, and also coming up with new ways to play, new formats. I love creating, like, I'm not satisfied with how much esoteric work we've done it to put in to make our format. We have to go deeper. We have to make it even stupider, even weirder. we have we had one format in the server that I currently run called the Battle Frontier and Resort, where every week that you take on another team, there are randomized crazy rules that change how the battle works. So every battle is totally random and crazy and wacky and wild, and I had to come up with a way to balance those. Balance those, make it be a league that is still fun for people to play.
Mm-hmm.
And I spent hours and hours and hours putting together little rule sets, figuring out a way to price these Pokemon, coming up with different ways to approach these problems. There's a whole other conversation to be had about specifically doing a draft league where you're only allowed to use one type, like a gym leader. It's called monotype. And there's a bunch of different ways to do that to make it fair. I could go on forever about all these different game design challenges. I've literally written, probably at this point, hundreds of pages, literally a thesis length on different avenues of game design of these draft leagues. And it made me realize that as much as I love like acting and performing and storytelling, that game design is a passion I have that I can just sink into forever. And if I'm working on video games specifically, could theoretically be lucrative enough to maybe, if I get lucky and get hired in the games industry, also have a job and do something productive for the world.
And also like do something that, I mean, it's still storytelling. It strikes me that all of this is storytelling.
Totally.
You would not be able to. I think that's the big thing I've learned from all this. You would not be able to see it if you just like got dropped in. But like what you're really doing is like a very advanced, complicated like community storytelling in such a cool, unexpected way in Pokemon of all things.
Oh, yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, and like I mentioned before, we also there are a lot of tournaments that raise money as well.
Yeah,
that you have to pay an entry fee, and then you get to participate in the more exclusive tournament, and those entry fees go towards raising money. We raised I think almost $1,000 for the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, which I'm super proud of. People do charity tournaments all the time to try to channel it towards good. Gives people a place to exist, to find community, to find culture. As I'm sure a lot of other gaming spaces are, it is really deep and interesting and beautiful.
Yeah. I've got some stuff I could start wrapping it up with. Shirley, do you have anything you need to you need to pull? I know you're good at pulling things out. Do you have anything you need to pull out?
Yeah, no, I just thinking and listening, and just from what I know of Pokemon and from what I learned poking around Showdown for a little bit, like I definitely was like, I don't understand a lot of this, but that seems cool. But it's definitely feel like one of those things that you learn by doing to a certain extent. And just also thinking about how like there's always been a collaborative element in Pokemon. Like there's always, like, even with the original like Game Boy ones, like you could link up and like trade Pokemon or battle, like mentioning. But it seems like the Pokemon as it was originally designed was never supposed to be about you battling other people. But then people said, but I like the battling and I want to play with my friends, and just kind of pulled that out and like made something that was more solitary into a community space. And I think that is really interesting.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. It almost feels like an afterthought, or like a way to sell link cables. To like, okay, you can only 100% the game if you have a friend who owns it. And yeah, like you're saying, it feels like
either buy both versions or have a friend.
Exactly, but you could get away with buying both versions. And I know plenty of people who just buy both versions to like trade with each other. But this, like you're saying, Shirley, seems the entire other way around, where it's just like, what if the point was always being with friends? Like, what if the only way you could play was always being with your friends?
Because Pokemon Pokemon isn't, you know, Overwatch or it's not a Smash. It's not even
Dota.
a Minecraft.
Yeah. It's not
like,
even a Minecraft.
It wasn't. It's like you created creative mode for Pokemon. Almost,
Yeah.
which I think is
Totally.
really cool. And also, like, especially with Showdown and the leagues, as you described them, especially with the limits placed on, because like looking through Showdown, what I noticed, it's like, oh, everyone's level 100, and you get to choose what type and what personality your Pokemon have.
Mm-hmm.
And I can see in the original games you mentioning like, okay, if you fight against this specific type of Pokemon, then it increases your defense faster than if you fought against this other one. Like, in the games, there's almost a resource management aspect to building up your Pokemon.
Yeah, on the real highest level.
Yeah, and like what Showdown does is essentially like taking out that aspect of resource management, and it's more like, okay, what do you do when I give you all of the Lego blocks and not just the ones from the set?
Totally.
And
that's
then
kind of where the most beautiful stuff comes from.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then it's also like, but creativity blossoms within limits, and so like stuff like, okay, we're not using these very easy to make a good team out of Pokemon, but let's use these other ones. Or these Pokemons now have a point value and you only have a limited amount of points to spend. Like resource management less on the item set, but on the who can you choose side.
Yeah.
And then, you know, and why do you make these choices? And the creativity that spreads from there. And like making it less about you playing against the game and more you playing against someone else. Because talking about like playing against people in a team, I would assume to a certain extent, if you know you're going up against this other coach, you may set up what 6 you bring for that particular day. Like, oh, I know this person really likes their dark type, so maybe I'll, you know, add a couple more. Like, oh, I know they really like this move, or this is what they've done in other tournaments. So playing against the player as well.
Totally. Can I ask a question of you guys?
Oh my god.
Oh yeah.
What? Sure.
All right. So I know on this show you interview gamers, specifically people who are part of these very small, esoteric, and weird communities, as that's where a lot of the folklore comes from.
Mm-hmm.
My question would be, in what ways would you say that what you've learned today about Pokemon draft leagues, in what ways does the community seem very alike other gaming communities, and what, if anything, would make it stand out as unique? Because I'm not part of all of these different communities. I'm really only part of Pokemon and like Minecraft modding are like the two really esoteric communities that I've been part of.
So what makes it like other video games?
What makes it like other communities, and what to you was surprising as something that like stood out that you haven't heard from other communities, or what do you think makes it unique?
I think okay. Oh, I don't know how to articulate this. Shirley, you're gonna have to help me.
All right.
Something that stands out. Oh, what does Daisy say in chat? Something that stands out to me is a technological mediation of the community. Okay, go off. More of that. Relying on very specific tech. Okay, you say that's something that stands out, but I think that's something that makes it like other video game communities, because last month
we were just talking about CRTV.
We were just talking.
Smash.
Yeah, when we did Smash, we were just talking about Smash as the number one thing that has preserved CRT TVs in the world. That like we will one day get donations of CRT TVs kept alive by old Melee pros who have kept all their CRT TVs because that those 30 seconds of or not 30 seconds, 30 frames of input delay would be literally like you literally cannot play Fox like that. You know what I mean? And I feel like
I'm passionate about this, Dom.
I'm so passionate because of man, it's like on the level I want like a t-shirt or like a tattoo at this point of just like of like a Smash player carrying a medium-sized CRT TV around. You know what I mean? And I think like what's so uh the thing I love about that image, and it's the thing I love about like the story of the kid being like, I have to go. My mom has to give me a haircut right now. Is that like the barrier for entry is so accessible that you could literally like people are literally doing this all the time. You know what I mean? It's like you're
Mhm.
Man, I don't know how else to make that comparison, but like that it's 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 so very it's so very accessible that like you said people who are like not in training or education like you mentioned like could be doing this upwards of 10 hours a day, you know? And that's just because it's easy not just to get into, and it's not just like okay like the barrier for entry is so low, but like it's not just about the barrier for entry being so low. It's the barrier for the barrier for entry being low doesn't just apply to winning matches. It applies to like feeling like
Being
you're a
part of
part
the
of a
community.
community. Exactly. And that's what I think is of like the best games that we have talked about folklorically on this show, whether it's Smash or Minecraft or Pokemon or Street Fighter, is that once you get over once you get past like knowing how the game works, then you're like accelerated into being part of a friend group.
Yeah, I
Mhm.
think that's also just like a lot of Discord communities, but especially because Pokemon Showdown is so accessible. It's free. You just need an internet connection.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Anyone can show up. People come up from anywhere, and so the community has to be welcoming and accepting. And yeah, I mean, in the VBL, um, some of the most important members of our community are people who showed up only a few leagues ago. So there's
Hmm.
some people who have been there for played in every single season of the last 14, and then people arrive, a few days ago. Uh, IRL friend of mine, Fire Falls, um, joined VBL a few seasons ago. Which I believe I got him into Draft League at all. His first season was in BFR, that league that I run. Um, I believe I did suggest that he come over and join VBL. He may have found his own way over. Um, but now he's making videos. He's been part of the live streams
Hmm.
that James does. I would say he's a really important member of the VBL scene. Um, and yet at the same time, to me, I'm like, oh, this guy just showed up. This is the guy that I've known for years, and he's the new kid on the block. Uh,
Mhm.
it is a really beautiful way to find connection quickly, immediately establish depth. There are people who will trauma dump on you within 5 minutes of meeting you and talking to you, which is certainly a thing that has happened to me a couple times. But it's also a place where if you're going through something, even if you don't know people that well, a lot of servers have like a venting channel. You can go in
Hmm.
there and you can say, "I'm really struggling with this issue. I don't understand this. Somebody is treating me this way," and you will have people who are as old and wizened as the 445-year-old OMG It's Daddy, who can give you some real old school advice.
Mhm.
What did Daisy say in chat there? The ways knowledge is transmitted is pretty similar to other communities at this level, and I think just like the way, and I think the part of that I think is the interesting folklore thing is that, or at least like for video game folklore, it's like the way knowledge is transmitted when the company isn't trying to dictate it top down seems to be very similar across games. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that's how I would
There's
add to
also
that.
there also seems to be an interesting like the effort in these kinds of communities of lowering the barrier to entry. Because even just
Mm.
comparing these two particular instances, like with the Smash Leagues, people bringing in their extra CTTVs and stuff, and creating something like Pokemon Showdown. Just this, like, because video games can be so resource specific.
Mm-hmm.
Like you know, as someone who did not grow up with a console or games or stuff, and therefore missed a lot of this growing up in a sense, and I'm learning a lot of it now. Like, these kinds of things are a barrier for people to enter these communities, and just the efforts by these communities for those who, in order to bring more people in, even though it is a very, like, yeah, a resource dependent kind of community, I think is fascinating.
Yeah. Whoa. Hold on. We got a good comment. Who wants to read this? Shirley, you want to read that?
Sure. Darioth writes in chat, a lot of the stories I've heard tonight remind me a lot of big games with popular internet communities I'm in, chess, DOTA. But what sets it apart from those, the niche nature of the community, in that sense, Pokemon Showdown community is sort of like gaming communities based around mods, where you are into a famous game / brand that people may have heard of, but you're really in it for this incredibly specific part of that world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You guys did a Minecraft episode?
We've done Minecraft, not on Gamer World History, but we played Minecraft with folklorists a couple times. We played Minecraft with a folklorist, like who studied children's like playground stuff, and we played Minecraft with a storyteller, like a professional like storyteller, and she got it right away. You know,
It's very interesting. Minecraft is similar to Pokemon in that there are
and we played Westeros Craft. We played Westeros Craft. We played him on. We did play Westeros Craft in costume. Yeah. Sorry, had to add that in.
There are so many of these tiny little subcultures. I hope someday that you guys are able to do a focus on Minecraft modding, or even within Minecraft modding, like one specific Minecraft mod. The way you can just drill down from this enormous game, Minecraft and Pokemon being similar, enormous communities, and then you get down to like 5 people who are extremely passionate about this one thing, about this modification one guy made for one video game 4 years ago for an old version of that game that people don't even play anymore. And the way people like reminisce on previous versions of Minecraft, like people reminisce on previous versions of Pokemon. Old formats is definitely a thing people in Pokemon talk about a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I think it is it's one of my favorite things to explore, is how far down you can go to find a small enough community that is a village. Because a game like Minecraft, Pokemon, millions and millions and millions of players, but you can't be friends with 2,000 people in a server. I used to moderate this server, World Pokemon Federation, that had 2,000 people, but I didn't know all the people. The reason I stopped moderating there is because I stopped losing a sense of the whole community. There was this idea that the guy who runs the server says, "Hello, welcome to the family," to every single person who shows up. But once we passed like 2,000 members, he stopped doing that. He stopped being able to, and I stopped even knowing the history of how every moderator on the mod team with me was there, let alone all the players in the league. I think there's like 10 or 11 different divisions, and each one has 16, so that's upwards of 200 people playing in the league at once. You can't know all those people. That's in our DNA.
Yeah.
But you get down to the size of one little town, one little village, one little church is what it would have been for a long time historically, and that's where there's a real community.
Yeah.
And how do you get so niche that you start to actually become seen among your community members, where you don't have to be, obviously there's communities that form around people who are virtuosic in their performances, and rise above, like, hundreds of thousands of people have tried speedrunning Mario 64, but you can be seen in Mario 64 if you're a really good speedrunner. But in Draft League, even people like that guy who got his haircut, he was 13. He's not as good at playing as everyone else, but he was still seen. He was still part of the community. He was still special because the community is just so small
Yeah.
that it's able to accept everyone who comes through. I love what happens when you get down to that small of a group.
And I love how you
real
described
passion.
the metaphor you used was a church. I love how you did that there, because I think the thing that religion and video games do the same, especially like in the scale we're looking at, is like there's a dogmatic structure, and there's like how you're supposed to play the game, and all the interesting stuff is happening in little churches in the countryside where they came up with their own saints. You know what I mean? I think that's the kind of stuff I want to study, not like what the Vatican or Nintendo says you should be doing.
Totally.
Yeah.
Have you guys done anything with the SCP Foundation, the Collective Fiction Project?
Mm-mm.
I know
Are
of
you
it, but I
unfamiliar?
don't think we haven't discussed it on Folkwise.
I
or
don't think I
anything.
know of it.
Oh my god. This is a folklorist's pardon the phrase, wet dream.
Pretty much, yeah.
It
It's
is
fun.
yeah, it is an enormous collective fiction creepypasta project.
Ooh. Yeah, that's so up our alley.
Right here, I think you can see it. There's a poster on my wall that says The Showroom. It is, oh, you can't see that it says The Showroom, but that's what it says. And then there's a little dotted line. It is the IKEA colors. That is it, because it is a fake IKEA sign from a interactive theater show that I put up.
I was gonna
that is
say.
set in the world of a single one of these. The SCP wiki is what it's called. Is like it catalogs a bunch of these fan-made, totally like collectively created cryptids. There are over 4,000, and my partner and I and a bunch of people created an entire interactive theater show based on just one of these cryptids that's called the Infinite IKEA, and we trapped audience members in a house that we made to look like this Infinite IKEA.
Oh my god.
That was along with all the lore, and we had people fly to Los Angeles from all over the country because they were so passionate about this tiny little subset of a subset of a subset of an interest. And I've never seen anyone have passion for any project that I've worked on like they did for that. And I think that's what made it, and that's what makes Pokemon Draft Leagues, and that's what makes Minecraft modding special.
And regional hot dogs and the monsters whose existence is contested in all of our favorite traditions that people like us like talking about.
Heck yeah.
Yeah. Jace, we've been talking about 2 hours. We asked you to come on and talk about 2 hours about draft leagues, and I think you crushed it.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. Do you have anything? You have anything else you need to add? You have anything else you want to let people know?
Am I allowed to do a little plug, shout out kind of thing?
Oh, million! Please, I encourage the plugs.
Thank you so much. Well, first of all, check out VBL, check out the Draft League. It's a very welcoming community. There's lots of people there. The community's grown a lot, but we can always, there's always room for more people. Me personally, I have a theater company here in Los Angeles, and I'm a big Dungeons and Dragons fan. And as part of that theater company, we recorded a Dungeons and Dragons live show about superheroes in Los Angeles, the terrible destructive messes they make, and then the people who have to clean up those messes. So I'm the dungeon master, and a bunch of my friends are the players. And we've been working really, really, really hard on editing it. It's similar to a Critical Role or a Dimension 20.
Mm-hmm.
And we want people to watch it. And we don't have a marketing budget. So if there's any possibility that is interesting to anyone, you can follow us on Instagram and on YouTube, completely unrelated to the Pokemon stuff. But if you like Dungeons and Dragons, and if you like me in any way, please check it out. I think you'll enjoy it. It is hilarious and a ton of fun.
Jace, if you can send us like a 16:9 ad, we will add that to like our break bumper. If, like,
What's the name again? I think I missed it.
Yeah, what's the name?
Sorry, I didn't even say the name. The theater company is called Fables and Rumors. You can follow us at Fables and Rumors on Instagram and subscribe to our YouTube channel at Fables and Rumors. The show is called The Cleanup Crew. And yeah, I would be overjoyed to send you over something like that. I'm doing all of the editing, all the VFX, all the graphic design for our marketing as well. So, oh yeah.
Yeah, please do. Absolutely.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Yeah, Fables and Rumors, two things, plenty of my favorite folklore as study. Jace, thank you so much for coming on Folkwise, for doing Gamer World History, for talking so much about Pokemon. And everyone in chat, I need you to do one thing for Jace, and that is drop ladders in chat. If you're a subscriber, you got ladders, drop those ladders in chat and give him a round of applause. Give Jace a nice... There we go! Give Jace a nice round of applause. Very good, very successful. Thank you. Ladders in the chat, everyone. If you don't have... if you aren't a sub, a hearty GG will do. Thank you so much, Jace, for coming on. GG's, homie. Welcome to Folklore.
Thank you so much for having me.
James, you snuck in that's like 18 ladders and then one picture of Mothman's butt. I saw that you snuck that in.
Amazing.
The round of applause one more time to Jace, the CEO of Bisexual Lighting, the champion, the Dragonair's strongest soldier. Thank you so much for talking to us.
Thank you for having me.